guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to finally be doing my 2021 books in review video where I give you all the statistics and sort of give general reflections on maybe best of, worst of, etc. Let's get started because these videos always tend to be a little long. So this year I read a total of 40 books. In a way, I've actually read 43 books, but considering the fact that one book was 4 volumes long, it's actually only 40 books. Unfortunately, I can't count 3 of these books, even though they're like 600 pages. But yeah, I read 40 total books, 10 nonfiction books, and 30 fiction books. And then I DNF'd 2 books. So like there were 2 books that I just I did not want to go on reading because I was just not into them at all, and that was A Quiet Life by sorry, we're gonna have to fight with the sun today, so I'm gonna have to do this on this side. So Kenzaburo Oe's A Quiet Life, and then Takeshi Kaiko's Darkness in Summer. When it comes to Quiet Life, I think I'm definitely one of the unique people who thought this was kind of boring. A lot of people have absolutely loved this book. So I'm not here to deter you from reading it. If you are interested, you could definitely like it. It's just for me, compared to his book A Personal Matter, this was too quiet and it just didn't give me anything compared to A Personal Life, which just shocked me in amazement. So yeah, those were the 2 DNFs of the year. This year I ended up reading 13 books by women, 25 books by men. It's not really a statistic I care about, but there you have it. The first book of the year actually was, unfortunately, I don't remember which one. I think it was A Quiet Life, A Quiet by Kenzaburo Oe. I DNF'd this one. Then I tried Darkness in Summer, DNF'd this one. So very, very bad start to my year. So my first completed book of the year ended up being In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. And it's a memoir about her escaping North Korea into China, and then finally ending up in South Korea, and then now in the current day she's living in New York in the US. This was absolutely excellent. I wish I had just started with this one instead of wasting my time with these, because basically I think the month of January this ended up being my only completed book. So these really brought my energy down, which is definitely something I made a point to fix this year, because I refused to start with a DNF this year. I just couldn't. I could not let myself do that. So the last book of the year, so I did end on a good note, because the last book of the year, I think we all know, ended up being the biography of Mao. Yeah, this is the only time this weekend I can film this, so we have to deal with the sun because I'm way too busy. So I ended up finishing with this biography of Mao. So kind of neat, you know, starting with nonfiction, ending with nonfiction. But this biography by Mao by Jun Chang was absolutely amazing. Absolutely loved it, adored it. It took me forever to read because the end of my year I was kind of slumming. But that is no reflection on the book. The book itself is absolutely amazing. Loved this. So then I ended up reading 30 books in English, 12 books in French, and 1 book in Japanese. Kind of that is a stat I do try and be conscious about during the year. I do try, my intention definitely is to read a lot more French books, because I only get to speak French about an hour per week, if even that sometimes, which means, and I have no other way to really listen to French, because I mean I would love to watch like movies on Netflix, but Netflix Japan just does not have any French movies whatsoever, and what they do, it's like the worst movies you could ever choose. Like, why do you have to choose the most, like, you know, like the sort of the silly comedy movies that have no need to be even created to begin with. So I don't really have that much access to French unless I read. So yeah, that's definitely something that I need to up. Japanese, that is going to go up this year because, as I mentioned in my sort of 2022 intentions kind of video, I am doing a buddy read with a friend where we will be reading one Japanese language book per month all of next year. So that should at least end up being 12 books this year. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm really, really hoping we stick with it because that's like pretty much the only real thing on this list where I'm like, yes, like this needs to happen. So with the 40 books, I read about 12,304 pages, which I did not calculate what the average per book is. So 40 books, so about 307 pages per book, which sounds about right. Although, to be honest, this year I actually read a lot of short books. I read a lot of like 120, 130, 150 page books. And then I read some real chunksters like the 600 page books, the Mao, which was 600, the Story of the Stone, which was 600 books. So yeah, like it kind of balanced. That average page per book is really basically a reflection of just the fact that I read some short books and I read some really long books. The shortest book of the year, surprisingly enough, since I read so many short books, the shortest book of the year was H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, which came out to 104 pages. So this is the shortest fiction book. The shortest non-fiction book I read was Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr. Both of these books definitely worth the afternoon to read them. Super fun. Well, this is super fun. I really just look at how the whole like time machine concept sort of began. So really, really fun. And then Why We Can't Wait is superb because Martin Luther King Jr. writes so well about the civil rights movement at the time, but because his words are just so superb and he's such an intelligent man, his words still ring so true to this day and age. And seeing how the events of this book have continued into present day is just absolutely, well, it's devastating, to be honest. It's absolutely devastating, but it is really remarkable. So two very, very good short books that are worth including into your, well, I need a short book every once in a while to read pile. Then my longest book, I think you can guess it, is The Story of the Stone by Cao Shui-kin. However, I did not finish this. I still have volume 5, and it's kicking me because I just flipped through volume 5 to check real quick, and it turns out I only had 376 pages left. I thought this was another, like, you kind of see this, right? They all look the same size, but 3 of these are 600 pages, and one is 350 pages. So they all look like they should be 600-page books, but for some reason, 3 are 600 and 2 are 376, and I did not realize that I could have most definitely finished this past year, which is unfortunate. But I mean, I will finish it this year. That's not too much of an issue. But I mean, even unfinished, this ended up being 2,176 pages with all 4 volumes. I need to stop putting stuff here. But out of a potential of 2,552 books, it's gonna kill my stats for next year. I've absolutely destroyed my stats. But yeah, if you don't let me count the book that I technically haven't finished yet, even though I've read so much of it, like, give me a break. But then the biggest book after that would be the Mao book. So the Mao book came out to be 672 pages. This is really, really bugging me. But yeah, so those are the longest books that I read this year. Yeah. Oh, well, that's the longest nonfiction book. So the Story of the Stone is the longest fiction book, but if you don't let me count that, then the second longest fiction book that I read would be The Woman in White, by Wilkie Collins, which comes out at 672 pages, but you don't feel them whatsoever. It reads, it's a page turner. So gripping. Actually, the Mao and the Sword Stone, they're all page turners. You do not feel the page count whatsoever. So that's really, really exciting. Let me put that aside because I will need to grab it later, if you know what I mean. Let's go into the concept of reducing the TBR pile. So there are two sets of data that I need to look at with this. One is, am I reducing the TBR pile by reading books that I've held the longest? And am I keeping the TBR pile reduced by reading all the books I'm buying as soon as I've bought them? So I've read 25 books from 2021, not published in 2021, but books that I purchased in 2021, which is basically half of the books I read. So it's not half of the books I've purchased, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But at least half of the books I've read are books that I bought in the year 2021 to be read in 2021. So that's really, really, really super exciting. Another 5 books came from 2020. So still, again, I'm purchasing the books that I'm buying as they come in, which for me is the main goal. Now, I did read some backlist. My biggest accomplishment is one book from 2021. If I can find it. Here we go. Not 2021, that's not what I meant. 2011, so 10 years ago. This is the book Isle of Dreams by Keizo Hino. This was a book that was given to me by a friend, an internet friend on Library Thing. They sent it to me in 2011, and I've carried it from Colorado to Texas to Japan, and this actually came from Maine, where she lives, so it's done a lot of travel for me to finally read it. It's not the most memorable book. It's not the book that I'll be first to recommend, but I did enjoy reading this, and I'm very glad to have finally read it. So then like 2014, when I read A Quiet Life by Kenzaburo Oe, that one had been on my TBR pile for quite a bit. Where is the sun now? Okay, I'm limited to half of the video. So Quiet Life was from 2014. I read 3 books from 2016, Darkness in Summer, Pétronile by Amélie Nothomb, and The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. So out of all those books, out of the 5 books that I read that are from way back, the one I'm most excited was The Woman in White. So maybe that has something to say that there's a reason books are staying on your TBR pile and you're not reading them. Maybe this could point to that, but you never know. Because I know last year I read a book from 2009, and that was The Spire by William Golding, and I absolutely adored that book. So, things are what they are. So again, going into the idea of books purchased in 2021, I'm actually very surprised by this number. I did not realize I had bought so many books, but it kind of makes sense because I did have a really good time at the French book sale. And then this does include the books from my Christmas TBR, which actually are not books meant for me to be reading in 2021. They're books that I purchased with the idea of reading them in 2022. So it's still counted in these 64 books. If I do remove those books, if I do remove the books that I purchased for the intent of reading them in 2022, which includes the Christmas book haul, and it actually includes a lot of French books that I bought like 2 days after I did that haul video, so I haven't done a haul video on them, and I won't. But I bought some French books. So if I remove those 16 books from the books purchased in 2021 meant for 2021, that brings me down to 48 books, of which I've read 28 that doesn't. So my math seems to be wrong because I have 28 here when I just said 25 above. But I mean, whatever, who cares? It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I've read about half of the books, it seems, that I purchased in 2021 for the sake of reading them in 2021, and they're still very active on my TBR for 2022. So I have no guilt about anything. I do think that stuff will get read in 2022, so not worried about that. I do think that's fine. But yeah, I was still surprised though by the number of books, but I also think it includes a lot of Japanese language books that I purchase but never hauled them on this video, because I don't like buy like 10 Japanese language books at a time. I kind of just like buy one here, one there, and that's not really enough to do a haul video. So that's why you guys don't really know about those purchases. Okay, so let's go by publication date, because this is really fun. The oldest book that I read, and now all my piles are all in random order. So the oldest book that I read that was nonfiction was The Gossamer Years, The Diary of a Noblewoman of Heian, Japan, translated by Edward Seidensticker. We don't know who the author of this diary is. For some reason, we know the names of all of her like relatives, but her name just never comes up in history. So it is an anonymous writer, but it is translated by Edward Seidensticker. This was published in 794. That's right, the year 794. So this is definitely the oldest book on my the oldest book by publication on my read pile, which is super exciting because it's a totally different world that you enter. The second for fiction would be Story of the Stone, as we know, one of the big Chinese classics, which was published in 1791. So those are the two oldest books by publication that I read this year. The newest book that I would have read, I have one fiction. It's came out in September 2019, and that is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, which, as we all know, is a sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. This I enjoyed fine enough, but I don't know why it would win any prize. It says it was the joint winner of the Booker Prize, but I don't think it had any. It didn't have that much appeal. It was fun, whatever, but I very much prefer The Handmaid's Tale, and I kind of wish it just stopped there. And then on the nonfiction side of things, The Hidden History of Burma, A Crisis of Race and Capitalism by Tant Minh Yu. This is an amazing nonfiction about how Burma became the Burma it is now, which is very important to understand, because its history is still very much active at this point. Aung Suu Kyi, someday I will memorize that woman's name, but she has just once again been sent off to prison. The latest report has that she's been sentenced to 4 years in prison. So this is not over at all, not whatsoever. So this was a very great read to read in 2021. Definitely recommend this. All right, let's go on. Publication date. So the publication date. So I already told you the oldest and the newest books on my TBR pile, but I forgot to go into the publication date in terms of just like general knowledge. The average publication date, excluding the two outliers of 954 and 1791, because those were so far way back, would be 1971, of which the median gives me 1984, so that seems about right. So basically, the majority of the books I read, surprisingly enough, are from 2000 to 2021, 17 books. From 1950 to 1999, I had 13 books. Then I skipped 1900 to 1950. I only read one book in that range, but I read 6 in the 1850 to 1900 range. And after that, once again, pre-1800, I read 3, which would be The Gossamer Years, The Story of the Stone, and then also The Castle of Toronto. So not bad, a pretty good range. I'm reading a lot more modern than I always read more modern than I think I do. but it's that's fun. I mean, it's all good. I do like though reading a little bit from each from various dates, because it gives you so much and such good variety. In terms of countries, the top three are, again, in the top three, Japan, US, and France. Japan with 14 books, US with 6 books, France with only 4 books, unfortunately. That is, again, something I would like to fix in 2022. Otherwise, China and England at 3 each. England this year was actually quite low. Previous years I've read a lot more from England. But otherwise, I read 1 book each from North Korea, Canada, Australia, Belgium, Austria, Mexico, Burma, Tibet, and Brazil. And that does include the nonfiction about those countries. I didn't necessarily read fiction. Not all of them did I read fiction from them. So, for example, Tibet and Burma, I read nonfiction about those countries. Tibet was written by a non-Tibet person, but Burma was written by a Burmese person. All right, so those are all the stats. This year, my reading, I enjoyed my reading, but I have to say nonfiction was the strong point with my reading this year. I don't have any new, I only have one favorite of the year, to be honest, for fiction, and that is Wilkie Collins' The Woman in White. I was absolutely entranced by this book, absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I could not stop thinking about the book as I was reading it. While I was not reading it, all I could think about was, when is lunchtime so I can read? When do I get to go home so I can read? I just could not stop thinking about this book. I absolutely loved it. So this was definitely my favorite of the year. Followed by Story of the Stone, but still I prefer the Chinese classic, The Water Margin, that I had read in the previous year. But Kao Shui-Kin, Story of the Stone. The thing is that, this doesn't hit, Water Margin was so enchanting and fun, and I really loved the myth of the book. While this book, what I appreciate about it is the expanse of it. Just the interaction of all the characters, showing the slow but quite methodical loss of power for the family at play. I think that's really, really astonishing. I mean, I think the like I said, the expanse of this book is absolutely amazing, but because it gets so choppy at the end, because it's said that Kao Shui-Kin never actually finished his own book, and someone else, Gao Yi. So you'll see in the later volumes, you see it goes from just Kao Shui-Kin to Kao Shui-Kin and Gao Yi, and that Gao Yi probably finished it, or there's a lot behind it all, and because of that, it's not as fluid as the narrative, and it gets a little bit choppy towards the end. But the expanse of this is just absolutely amazing. So this would kind of be my second favorite, but not an overall favorite from for the entire the year. My favorite, so yeah, the nonfiction definitely was strongest. I thought Columbine was an excellent read by Dave Colin. This was definitely a really great insight to school shootings. I thought that was excellent. In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park, her memoir, very, very sad, but definitely a very, very good insight as to the life in North Korea and the life when you're escaping North Korea. Just seeing what they have to go through is absolutely devastating. Eat the Buddha by Barbara Dimick. Barbara Dimick is absolutely amazing. Read any of her nonfiction. Just go ahead and put them in your cart because she's so good. So this is Eat the Buddha, Life and Death in a Tibetan Town. This was absolutely amazing. Again, the hidden history of Burma, so good. So much to get out of this. Definitely a must read, so that you can understand current events in Burma. And then again, the unknown story of Mao. Absolutely such an impressive feat to have done this. This is really, really amazing. Mao is just a horrible person, and the extent of his being is just, wow, this book was impressive. I also want to give a special honorable mention to a nonfiction that I actually read in 2020, but my friend was borrowing it, so I forgot to mention it in my 2020 in review book. But I've been thinking about this all year, about how I didn't get to tell you my favorite nonfiction of 2020, so it's here today, and that is Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This was just an amazing, amazing look at one of the worst accidents in Everest history. So that's honorable mention because this was my favorite of 2020 and I never got to mention it, and for a year I could not stop thinking about it. So yeah, Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. It's finally out there, although I've mentioned this several times in other videos, but it's finally out there that this was one of my favorite nonfiction. So this was absolutely amazing. And again, Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr. This essay I thought was absolutely pivotal. So good. I wasn't even looking at my French pile. I still have more. I do have more favorites. What am I talking about? I mean, that's just, I'm just being silly. See, once you get the books underneath your eyes, you get like flashbacks to like really, really good moments. Cyrano de Bergerac, the play Cyrano de Bergerac by Edmond Rostand. I absolutely loved watching this movie growing up, with where Gérard Depardieu plays Cyrano. He's so good. That movie is excellent. I finally read the play itself, and it's exactly just so full of such good memories with such good rhythm and energy and wit and humor, but gives you a look into different types of love, and I thought this was absolutely amazing. Love Cyrano de Bergerac, so good. And then the very first book, Les Rougons Macquart series by Zola, the very first book, La Fortune des Rougons, The Fortune of Les Rougons, absolutely amazing. What an amazing start to this series. Can't wait to read the second book. Definitely will be continuing this year. But yeah, absolutely so good. So yeah, I mean, I read some good stuff. I don't know why I always feel like I haven't read some good stuff by the end of the year when I actually have. Like, even like Jules Verne, Les Tribulations d'un Chinois en Chine, like the Tribulations of a Chinese Man in China. This was fun. This was quaint. I really liked it. I really liked this series by Aki Shimazaki, only available in French, but the series L'Homme du Chardon. I love the concept of exploring different side characters of one story in different books. I think that's absolutely genius. I was really impressed with this. So yeah, so maybe that's just what it is. Maybe it's like all the English books I didn't like and all the French books I did like. Maybe that's what it is. So yeah, like most disappointing books, I would have to say, well, other than the DNF, but the DNF books, I've discussed those enough. The nonfiction, the Trauma Cleaner, I kind of thought this was whatever, who cares? Didn't really, it's fine, but I didn't really like the author putting herself into this nonfiction book, and then the person, we're following Sandra. I just don't think she's a good person. I don't deny her the horrible life she's had, but I don't think she's a good person. So, and I think this book tries to pretend too hard that she is. Another disappointing book, definitely Science Preceding the End of the World by Yuri Herrera. By the blurb, I thought this was going to be the most amazing book ever that really used language to transcend borders, and I didn't get any of that. None of that existed in this book. I don't know if it's just the translation, but I thought this book was super choppy. Not so much disappointed, but I wanted more from these books. Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. I still love this. I still enjoyed this. Okay, I didn't love it, but I still really enjoy this because I love Gothic fiction, but I wanted more out of this. I wanted it to have more of a say about religion and things like that, kind of like how The Monk did, by Matthew Lewis, and The Monk is absolutely a stunning book, but I wanted more from the Castle of Otranto, but I did really enjoy this. But also Winter in the Blood by James Welch, like I wanted more from this as well. It's not bad, it's still very good, but I think it could have done more. And then The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. Not disappointed, but that could have done more too. What else? I think we all know my reaction to Meurtre à la Corte du Prince Genji. Deaths in the Court of Prince Genji by Nagao Seo. I really liked the idea of this. I loved revisiting the characters of Genji again, but I thought this was just like a really good bad fan fiction at the end of the day. So, all right. Best cover. There aren't really too many covers that stand out to me this year compared to the previous year, and now all my books are out of order, but I really loved this cover by Why We Can't I really love the cover to Why We Can't Wait. This is great. I think the cover to Columbine is stunning, with just the school of Columbine at the bottom and all this open space to sort of show the devastation of the event. I think it's really, really quite remarkable. I liked the bold cover of Mao. I also liked Everything Is So Mixed Up. I do like the cover to Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. I think this is quite fun. I do kind of wish this wasn't a quote. I think by some other person, John Banville, I don't know who that is, but you know, great achievement whatsoever. I wish they had done something else with this, but I do like this font choice. I like the bold cover, and I think this is pretty good. Bad covers of the year, I would say Isle of Dreams. This font, this looks like what I would create in terms of like, this is the, you know, in like in a initial presentation. Oh, this is kind of the direction I think we should go in. Let's use this and then move on from there. But the thing is, they never moved on from this. They kind of just stayed with this. And not really as much fun. Okay, this is too much light. There we go. Maybe I should have just done this from the beginning. But I'm not refilming this. And then the Trauma Cleaner. Where did that go? It's a mess here. It's a mess. But you remember the one with the gloves? I liked the idea with the gloves. But I just think there's like, how could that have just disappeared? I have no idea. Oh, here it is. I like the idea of the gloves. Here we go. Now I can put it over here. But all of these like little blurbs on the side, I just think it's unnecessary. Just adds a little bit of clutter. But yeah, like nothing really stands out. I think everything is kind of good in the sense that it's appropriate for the book at hand. But nothing too stands out. And yeah, and then we're going to just end with the manga that I read in 2021. I read 41 individual volumes of manga. I read the entirety of Orange. I had already read volumes 1 through 3, but I reread them and then read all the way to volume 6, which is a really great slice of life manga about some good friends trying to save their other friend, which was really fantastic. Love that. I read volume 15 of Yotsubato. Yotsubato is the cutest, most delightful manga, I mean, that there ever was. Love this. So this is the latest and the last volume currently, because at these days the author publishes like one every 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. So I read them when they come out, and that's about it. I read volume 6 of 7 of Gokushifudo, The Way of the House Husband, about a yakuza who has retired and is just a house husband, and this is delightful, so funny. Absolutely love this. Just I always crack up. So I read the latest 2 volumes, and I have volume 8 waiting for me. I also read, finally, I had read volumes 1 through 8 of the very famous 80s manga Cat's Eye, the same author of City Hunter. I had read 1 through 8 a long time ago, never read volumes 9 and 10, finally finished this series. Love this series. I mean, I love this author. I love 80s manga. So really happy to finally have finished that one. Then I read a standalone from the I Am a Hero series. This is I Am a Hero in Osaka. It's just like a little standalone of some characters dealing with the zombie outbreak in Osaka. It was really fun to revisit this world. It doesn't add anything to the series, but it's just a fun zombie book. It was really fun. Really loved revisiting that world again, as I said. And then finally, I read the soccer manga off size. I read all 29 volumes of the manga. I forgot to mention in my December wrap-up that I had completed this series, but I did. I read the last 9 volumes in December. I love soccer manga, always will love soccer manga. Really enjoyed myself with this one. It's more simple than the other ones. It's basically pure soccer compared to some of the other soccer manga I've read, but I still really liked this, and I'm really happy to have read it. Oh, I'm so mad at myself that this light is so much better. I just like spent a 35-minute video in the corner like this. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first introduction to my channel, welcome to my channel where I have bad lighting. Yeah, that's gonna annoy me, but it is what it is. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching if you've been with me the entirety of 2021. Thanks for watching if you're using this video as an introduction to my channel. It's probably a bad introduction to my channel, but thanks for watching nevertheless. And that's it. Let's hope for a really fantastic 2022 reading for all of us. I can tell you it's already started well, so I'm very excited about that. So yeah, let's get to reading, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!